very late in '92 that they received the funding for this particular piece. So it's been several years. And so in '92, I had the studio adapted, once I knew that this was really on, had it adapted to build this wall, etc., to be able to start on the mural. And then actually began painting on it in late '93. The most natural idea to me seemed like doing a cross-section of the theater. The space itself was a 1x4 space. It allowed almost a sort of vista shot of what could be going on within the center itself if a production was going on. So it was basically stripping away a wall and looking from backstage to audience to lobby. Art dissolving into life, life dissolving into art. Originally, it was for a site downstairs. The main wall that you encounter as you come in the theater, as you come in the art center. Dead ahead, the main lobby wall, which was 10 by 40 feet, so it was 1x4 in dimension. In the process of trying to raise money, etc., the committees changed and people changed, and they decided on the upstairs site. Also a long wall, but somewhat shorter. The image would have to be about 9 feet, and it would run about 50 feet. So it pretty much went from a 1x4 dimension to a 1x5.5. There was another factor about the upstairs walls that the middle panel, if you can divide this into thirds, was sunken in 5 feet with two curved walls taking you into that middle panel. So it was like a huge triptych. That offered another challenge that hadn't been present in the downstairs side. This was something that had to be read broadly from a distance of 25 feet, which is as far as you could get away from it in the lobby upstairs. But also potentially you could see a lot of it, the top half of this mural, from down the street, from Dixon Street. So you can really see up. So in a sense it has to be painted broadly so it reads from a distance. So it's simply painted. But it also has to be painted in a certain amount of detail so that you can get right up to it, which is what people can do when they come out of the theater and go right up to it and look at this. So that was a challenge, is to paint with both those in mind. The painting is divided into 3 panels, essentially. Backstage would be one panel, stage and audience would be the other, and then the end of the audience in the lobby would be the far left panel. So it seemed like a natural division. So I wasn't disappointed with the fact that it would be divided into these thirds. It's a natural thematic. Last spring, shortly after I found out that this specific project was the one that was funded to actually be carried out and done and completed, I immediately arranged for somebody to come in and build this enormous wall, which wasn't here before, and it's about 60 feet long. It almost runs from the entire length of the studio is about 65 feet or something. So it leaves just enough room to get into the back room back there and also get into the front room. And essentially the rest of it is just one huge painting surface, which is ironically stage set muslin. It's what they use for doing stage sets. So I thought that was secondarily kind of an appropriate thing. I started by drawing on it. And then I began just applying some washes of oil paint to see how I liked the response of the surface to the paint. And I didn't like it at all. It was like painting on a sponge, and I like a surface to be very slick. So I thought 56 feet or 50 feet of a very absorbent surface could probably kill me if I worked on this, like this the whole time. So I decided to buy a different brand of gesso, put the gesso on myself, so I essentially covered the entire first drawing, which was hard to do because I felt pretty good about that drawing. But I couldn't continue with it. Covered it, started the drawing again, but starting the drawing again gave me ideas that I wouldn't have had if I'd just stuck with that original drawing. Purchased paints in quarts and dozens of tubes at a time, bigger brushes. A friend of mine up the street, who I've known for a couple of years, had some bamboo growing in his backyard, and we thought that would be a good way of taking small oil brushes and sticking them in the end of bamboo poles and painting from a distance. The object of that being, you could be 3 or 4 feet away from it and you could see the entire scope of the wall in relationship to that. The way I'm going about this is really hiring models to sit for almost everything. I've already worked them out before that, but I want somebody to sit so I see the particulars. The surprises that you see when you observe something in reality is always astounding to me. The light that I would have predicted on one side of something is never exactly the way I would have thought. Turning to look back at someone else. And you get into funny little situations of, I tend to force these poses to be extremely extreme. And so I'll usually have people leaving here with, holding their neck, or, wondering, like, oh, my back, it feels terrible. So I tend to, really be influenced by, the Baroque artists like Tintoretto and Titian, who took these poses that are called contrapposto, which means you take one gesture this way and you take another gesture this way, that's opposite, within one pose. So I have people, even in a sitting position, sometimes take positions that are absolutely impossible. And then when I'm painting, I'll actually stretch it and make it even more impossible. Not so that it looks like that to the viewer, but so that it has the sort of necessary tension or animation that I want. The line of light is basically that I'm making up. So I'm using this to sort of direct your attention across the painting. Also to be true to some sense that this is theatrical light. The other thing is that there's, on the far left part of the painting, there are two people from the audience who figure in the picture as being very large. They're real close to the painting and they're applauding. One is applauding and still looking at the performance. And the other character is about ready to leave and go up into the lobby. And they form probably the two largest figures in the painting, and they are sort of what I call like a vortex of interest. And they're on the far left. The woman who's applauding and still looking at the stage forms this connection with the actor who's bowing. And in a sense, they offer the kind of visual torque, those two, the applauding woman who's looking at the actor on stage who's bowing, who's going into the curtain, and that actor bowing. Those form the sort of pivot points or torque in the painting visually. And the light up above just simply, how can I say it, just re-emphasizes that. This is not a surface of lots of little paintings. It really is a different animal. It's a large design in which the figures, the stage, are just components. It turns into something different on this scale. And I'm really aware of that now, after all of this. But you realize that it has to sustain interest beyond just an initial engagement. It's going to be always there. It still intrigues me that this is a painting about the very thing that's going on in the lobby when people come out.